Okay, thank you very much for having me. I'm honored. And by the way, thank you so much, Marty. You always do such a good job. And a lot of the stuff that I've done recently, belongs to the goodwill that you created around the companies I was dealing with, and people who were very kind to me from your panel. Today, I thought, as you asked, I'd like to really address what is the opportunity out there today, and who are the future healthcare leaders, and what empowers them? What are the driving forces? I think there's I call it three Geminis or triad. It's the confluence of three really very interesting activity coming in the midst of this mess that we are all going through, and all kinds of worries that the economy is changing, banks are falling apart and all that stuff. Usually these are the times that great companies come out of them. And this is what I noticed in the 70s. And the leaders today, the Googles and the rest of the world, didn't exist, around that time. That's how they came up. So the next 20, 30 years is going to see some really outstanding companies. And what are they based? I think they're based on revolutionary sciences that just came about in the last decade in particular. And we are not paying enough attention to them, but somebody will, and this will go forward. And that's what I kept talking to you guys about Rejuvenan, which I think really listened to that call. In particular, what is very interesting, I won't go to the stuff that you guys already talked about, which is that unfortunately we have a sick care system. We don't have a healthcare system. It's misnomer. Not only we don't have it, around the world is the same thing. It's based on essentially reactive medicine, and with all due good reason. And I'm very happy to see all these progress in drug therapy and all that people talked about in your panel. It's really reactive to the problem. Many of these problems could be prevented, could be really changed well ahead of time. So preventive care or true health care doesn't exist. So what I try to talk about is what I call whole care, the combination of essentially sick care, which you need from time to time, episode of sickness happens, and health care, which is most of the time, hopefully you're healthy. But we don't go see our doctors or providers when we are healthy. Unfortunately, this habit has just developed, and we all really die too early or have a lot of problem in our lives in terms of our healthcare. So what are the sciences that are really coming in that is going to make a lot of difference? The entire legacy healthcare system worldwide is, as I said, is a misnomer. And the way I look at this thing, it is for the time for cellular medicine. Something goes wrong with your heart 3-4 years ago, and you don't know about it at the cellular level. Then 4 years later, it shows up as a heart problem. And next thing you know, you go through direct therapy and all the terrible thing that happens to us. So cellular medicine is one of the biggest forces that we are dealing with, and is going to drive all of us. And there was some conversations on your panels before on that. In particular, it's genetic information. That's the best of some of the most important part of our cellular structures. At Rejuvenan, we really recognize sciences, like telomere biology, which is the tail of 23 chromosomes we have. The longer the telomere are, the healthier we are, the shorter, the sicker we are. The mitochondrial discoveries that has been fantastic. Very good new biologies that have been discovered there. And that's very critical. That's how we get our ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is basically the source of our energy. And so when you come around and look at these cellular medicine, we need to add genotypic information to what is so-called phenotypic information. Phenotype of basically a reactive medicine, all is based on phenotypic information, physiological information. So we see more and more, I see more and more influence of genomics, genetics into this whole picture of healthcare, and the future companies will have a very large doses of it. And I can go into some details of it a little bit later. Again, if you don't mind, I'm not going to go into details of what I do in Rejuvenan, what we are doing. We are in the midst of a quiet period with some big conversations going around with us. So I cannot go into details of it. I wish I could tell you some things that I can't right now. But the bottom line is that whole genotypic information addition is very important, and it's very exciting to focus on. To just give you one of the statistics, 40% of all diseases, according to literature, all the diseases that humankind today, 40% of them on average are based on some genetic disorder. Now, some, of course, 100%, some nothing, but bottom line is an average diseases has got 40% driven by genetic lack of proper genetics in the body. So that whole area, again, it takes a lot of time to talk about that. But for instance, if you heard this great stuff about Alzheimer, which I'm very glad to hear, but equally, let's say Parkinson's disease, which is absolutely a lot of it could be prevented, and at the same time, you know, you can, if you get it, if you know ahead of time that you've got the synuclein gene, for instance, in you, you could do down-regulated, up-regulated, and live much longer. It turns the disease becomes a chronic disease. So many of these diseases could be turned into chronic as opposed to killers. I won't go into details of it, but the co-founder of Google discovered that he had one of these genes, and he's now lived 30 years beyond the day of discovery because he spent the time and money to down-regulate those genes, that not let them to be active in it. Then let's move on to another piece of this picture, and that is the Moderna type of activity, which is mRNA. mRNA is a really significant development, as we saw how COVID was taken care of with mRNA. Now the company is working to develop a vaccine targeting respiratory so-called syncytial virus, and is coming up with a shot that can target different types of cancer. Particularly when it's used, they have a deal with Merck's immunotherapy, Keytruda. That's very effective. This is very good because then with this methodology, they'll personalize your special cancer and then go and develop a very personalized drug for you with Keytruda to take care of it. So there's a lot of promise in there. They're not I don't know too many startups, but Moderna would be a very good example of where this is going to go. By the way, they recently have tied some relationship with IBM about using their artificial intelligence and their mRNA technology, using the, you know, this whole sphere. You'll see this AI repeats itself all over the place for the new medicine, which is I'm going to be talking about in a minute, like everybody else is talking these days. But there's a bubble coming here, but the reality is that it's a fantastic piece of technology. We've been using it for nearly 5 years, and it's really helps our physicians, all their cases, to be prepared ahead of time when they want to look at the patient. So equally, and I move over to Illumina, which is of course the biggest sequencing company, and their particular product for liquid biopsy, and really exciting stuff in GRAIL, which they created, and there's all kinds of back and forth with the government whether you could own it or not. But anyway, GRAIL could identify some 50 cancers by just a few drop of blood. They could analyze it and tell you if you're having some kind of a cancer is growing in you. And that is so important to, if you understand it ahead of time, you could do some good things about it genetically, as I was just talking about it. Let's leave that subject. What is the role of technology, which I think is the other leg of this new movement into medicine? A lot. You got currently technology is primarily used in medicine for administrative purposes. It's beginning to slowly seep into the practice of healthcare and medicine, which is very good to see. But cloud computing, and particularly now with AI and quantum computing coming at us, this could become very exciting. You could go to take a look at the doctor's EMRs, patient EMRs, and identify or de-identify. It could really do some incredible analysis and come up with solutions that are really exciting for therapies for humanity. The combination of blockchain and I think AI is the other area that is really fantastic. Blockchain, with its ability to do good, clean ledger in terms of records, and its ability to, for so-called smart contracts, is very exciting, and particularly that they have AI. So the combination of the two could be really exciting. And I see a number of companies that are coming up, offering, products that are based on that kind of a combination. In any event, because you know so much about AI because of all the papers, the only thing that I would say, if you really want to know, NVIDIA is the mother or whatever of this industry, because their computers, their chips really empowers everything that we see in AI. And this guy, Jensen Huang, is a genius, and the CEO of NVIDIA. His annual address, which I can't wait for January, is when he does it, or February in this year. And look it up in Google. It's a really great education. It takes 2.5 hours to sit through it. I've done it 3-4 times. You can see its influence everywhere, and particularly in medicine, could be very exciting. And then finally, healthcare's new economics. We can talk forever. By the way, one more word on AI, and that is, if you feed it garbage, it will be garbage out. It could be GPT-4, which when they go to the regular web, they pick up all kinds of things they call hallucination. It's just the wrong thing to do. I think if they stayed in domain specific, and for instance, healthcare, we can offer this incredible LLMs to them, would be really the way to go, because I think you get clean data, clean information, and you get really good answers without all this hoopla. So it's the beginning of AI, and we will have to sort of put up with it until we have clean data and clean information that comes out of it. Now, what is the healthcare new economics? The new economics of healthcare is looking more and more like value-based. I ran an insurance company, Oxford Health, and we didn't have this. Well, at that time, Obamacare came out and had so-called ACOs, accountable care organizations, were the ones that were charged with, with taking care of the population health of a group, and being able to live within the reimbursement that the government gave. And they were generous enough that you can create companies. But now this has gone more toward an IPA, Independent Patient Association, and Independent Physician Association rather, and serving that whole area is economically very lucrative. The last year, for instance, the government gave an 8% rise in prices of reimbursement, which is really very generous given the particularly terrible year that it was last year. We'll know what is this year. But the bottom line is this: the value-based medicine, taking care of people and making sure they're happier, they're healthier, and then as a result, as a company, your MLR, medical loss ratio, goes down and profitability goes up, is a great formula. And the best probably way to really go about building these companies, you really got to be involved with the idea of having having the idea of Medicare Advantage, Medicare A, we call it. It's very generous and it's very good, and it's growing like crazy. And if you want to really know how successful it is, look at the new companies that have been bought out. I've got a cap table here of comparing these companies. They've been all being gloved up where they had this relationship with Medicare A, and have been trying to put together an ecosystem. You look at CVS Healthcare and Walgreens, even Amazon. CVS bought Signify and Oak Street, each for about $10 billion, multiple of sales valuation. And even Doximity, which nobody bought, is in the market, is going at about 15 times sales. It's just an amazing valuation that these companies are getting, because they're showing the way to the future of how healthcare economics is going to work. I can go on forever on any of these subjects, but I just thought I would give you a sense of the new economics, the way people want their healthcare, and the way value-based healthcare is beginning to penetrate things. The technology that is really making it happen. Without it, you can't have the efficiencies that is needed. And then the new sciences that are really the basis of really new healthcare. It's got to, people who grab these three things and pull them together can build really great venture-based companies that could have tremendous value and will, no doubt in my mind, become the future of future companies of in the United States in terms of, well, the world really, just like 70s where we didn't have a lot of these companies. 90% of the companies that are on the exchanges today did not exist. So I stop there. If there's any question, I'd love to answer them. I could go into details, but those are the three forces that I see and the opportunities that I see we can exploit.
Fred, wait, I've got a few questions. I hope you don't mind if you can just follow. So yeah, so you talked about AI, and I think that's really important. And I guess my question is AI more diagnostic in nature, or will it also help the development of therapeutics?
I think in both. In fact, it's going to have such influence all around. Diagnostic in the sense that, well, for instance, we have created an engine, diagnostic engine based on digital format, but now with AI, it's so much easier. It took us 3-4 years to do it. So diagnostically, we can see it. In terms of product development, it's huge. Drug companies will have a field day with this ability to look through. Basically, they offer you large language models with information that is really great. So every human being has got 3 billion base pair of genetic base pair in their genome. And imagine all of the people interacting, is huge database of information that we could use in terms of coming up with new ideas. And so I see it's penetrating everything. It's really as big as everybody thinks it is and is worried about it. And I think there is reason to be worried in some ways, but I think it's way out, its potential is way outweighs anything. It's going to be one of the greatest gifts in medicine.
So, I know that, again, people talk about therapeutics a lot and they talk about treatments and protocols, et cetera. But I mean, let's face it, you founded Oxford Healthcare, right? Mm-hmm. There still must be great needs from a logistical and operational point of view on delivery, right? So there's delivery, there's telemedicine, which we haven't really addressed. And then there's also, there's this tremendous demand for medical services because of COVID and just aging.
Absolutely.
Right? And so you see this kind of this equilibrium between service delivery, where like the pay for nurses has gone through the roof, right? There's a shortage of nurses, there's a shortage of radiologists. I mean, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, but first of all, let me give credit to my good friend, Steve, who was the real true founder of Oxford. Everybody gives me some credit for it, but he's been the true founder. I came in to really try to help to turn it around when it got really bad. I was one of the early investors, but anyway, thank you for that. Yeah, I think you're saying, how do the entire system benefit by AI? I know that if we in Oxford, we had 2.2 million subscribers, for instance. If I had AI, I could run the identified searches using AI to find out what was the most dominant theme in AI, in our disease management part of the business. What was what was the biggest spay with the smallest spay? A lot of new products that it could come out of AI that we didn't have those days. So it makes operating any part of healthcare a lot more efficient if you use it properly. And I think you're going to get to see some easier form of the chat GPTs and the rest that are coming out to really see that it's not that hard. Average person could really do it. I will let you know that I invested in a company called Vernique, which is in New York City 3 years ago. And it's I think one of the better AI situations where we do only take the great information based on real businesses and real people, as opposed to going searching in the web to find information that is all over the place. And it's been an effective product. Within a week, the company could put up solutions. For instance, they're doing grocery stores, not just pushing them, but I'm just saying that this is the kind of information. You go to Walmart, you will interact with this robot that is basically a computer screen, and it you tell them what you're looking for. It tells you where it is, how it is, all the attributes of it, and what you should know about it, what competing product there is, and what products will sell, all kinds of goodies about it. And so this is the kind of thing you can get. And they put that whole system in 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. It's just amazing how quickly you could build a store of information based on, real businesses. So my bottom line, my key point is, let's get real information and feed it into these systems and clean it up, and then use it like it's again, we are at this web moment, or iPhone moment of, again, in this another technology for this century.
Right. So, and just to give an example of AI, so I mean, as many people know, I live with a doctor, and she uses an AI for not for diagnostic, but for note-taking purposes. And so the way the AI assistant was trained was that the patients gave permission to be overheard during the meeting, and they had a bunch of doctors in India, many of them American, taking notes, and then they would submit the notes to the AI. Over time, the AI replaced the note taking from the Indian doctors. It was trained in time, and that seems to be a remarkable thing. Just another note, I ran into a Harvard trained entrepreneur in Silicon Valley last month, and he says, I can diagnose things just from your camera. I can diagnose just by recognizing how your face looks, whether you may have an illness of one sort or another. So I mean, it just keeps on adding up.
Some of this has been going on. If you talk to a dermatologist, most of them could, if you take a picture with your own cell phone and send it to them, they could diagnose it very easily. But what is very interesting is that doctors note taking, they have to take notes, and particularly in medical centers. And so there is that database exists. So you use those case scenarios, which is when, real cases. And if you have enough of it, then the machine learning comes in, and then the AI comes in. And so so I see notes taking. How would you like to have a book called Marty Sakata Health? And in about 5 minutes, it will put together a 300-page book saying where you're born, what experiences you had, what child diseases, fortunately or unfortunately, you had, or problems you didn't have, and so on and so forth. It's just a new world that's going to come on us. It's a very exciting world. I'm very excited by it.
Right, and also, and finally, I mean, again, I'm not sure if we really addressed the operational delivery aspect to all of this stuff or not. I mean, and are insurance companies walking away from some of the telemedicine that they implemented during COVID, or your thoughts on that?
I don't think they're walking away from telemedicine. They've gotten used to it, and in fact, all the doctors have gotten used to it, and so it's not as strange as it is. As you know, I was one of the first ones who had that, and then, when COVID came, they were forced to really look at the screens and do telemedicine. So telemedicine become very commoditized, and in very good in many ways, because you can see. These doctors, particularly in New York, if you want to go see, I don't know, the dermatologist, an eye doctor, whatever, they give you a time 6 months away or 4 months. They're busy guys or women. But for telemedicine, at the end of each day, they'll have a room for you. And most of the time, you don't need, to go in person and do things. So it's becoming sort of a routine. Even the big medical centers, with the docs usually who hated doing this, now they're very familiar. They don't have any problem with it. So I see that as a positive that, developed as a result of COVID.
And this is really the last question. I kind of folds into a question that was in Q&A, which is that, you're a legendary investor, and, I know a lot of firms that you invest in, like they're Harvard related, Stanford related, coming out of the best schools. How do you find deals that you have invested in? And what do you look for? And what kind of opportunity? And does it matter like what the deal is priced at when you look at it, at what round, et cetera? I mean, I think you had a Silicon Valley investment, maybe it was like 5 or 10 years ago, but you're talking about a Newport Beach, and then a lot of people poo-pooed and it exploded in value, right? So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know which one that was. Yes, the way I look at deals is very simple. It's really the people behind it is so important. And that's number one. Number two is that I look at deals thematically. So in the themes like I just discussed today, I would like to see deals in those areas, and people educate me if it's wrong or something, we modify it. But it's usually the areas that I've been okay with thinking in the last 50 years. If this is where I want to go, it usually ends up being so close, at least, to what the ideal is for the future company in the field. So I really like the idea of good people, good ideas in the long-term growth vector that I sense. Then aside from that is just meat and potatoes of business building, the proper financing. And bottom line is that CEOs who know how to finance their companies and they're very engaged, they always make it one way or the other. If it doesn't go exactly the original plan you had, but they will modify it. And that is very important. I think it's so important to be market sensitive and modify your business model as you go on. As you've probably noticed in some of the companies that I had, that along the way we had to change. I didn't even want to get telemedicine into the system. I had to acquire something to do it. So you need to move with the market. You just don't do things when the market is telling you where to go. I think it's very important to pay attention to it. So there's a bunch of things that we can talk about that is really fundamental to good investment, but those are really basics. Human beings, areas that is attractive.
One more last question. So healthcare investing is so different than tech investing, in that if you're like 22 years old and you've got a great tech idea, somebody throws dollars at you. But in healthcare, I think gray hairs matter a little bit. I mean, can you talk about experience? And I think you just kind of got at it where you said being able to change direction matters a lot. Can you just, I mean, if somebody's exited a healthcare venture in the past, that's probably looked upon favorably, right? I mean, can you
talk about
experience?
Experience is very important. It's a long story, but I think I don't want to shake hands with someone who hasn't failed here and there and learned something out of it, made something out of it. And not that failure is the thing I'm really looking for, but it's something that was challenging and they were able to get around it. So experience is very important. Being ever an optimist about your North Star. If you keep going towards it, unless there's some fundamental changes and you want to change that. And that's, by the way, why these AI that is coming in is going to change a lot of the fundamental assumptions of people about new businesses. But then otherwise you go to the North Star, you keep plugging in a day in after day out, and good people end up with good situations in the long run, and they get there and they have a good time. So the bottom line is experience in anything in life is very important, but particularly in committing yourself to brand new ideas, startups, which are very difficult to really build, but a few of us are crazy to do it. And the experience is totally necessary in order to do it. I think but again, how do you get experience? You get with a group that let you do things, and you learn from them, and you find out that even the seniors make mistakes, but it's recovery from them and ability to really get on to the original vision and make it happen.